Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. I just walked one of America's most interesting real estate streets. I'll tell you what I saw, then what it takes to get rents to increase in the U.S., more real estate investing content, then it's about jealousy and envy, why we hate Amazon founder Jeff Bezos for his wealth, yet love performers like LeBron James and Taylor Swift for theirs. It's a case study on wealth, entrepreneurship, and celebrity today on Get Rich Education.
Since 2014, the powerful Get Rich Education podcast has created more passive income for people than nearly any other show in the world. This show teaches you how to earn strong returns from passive real estate investing in the best markets without losing your time being a flipper or landlord. Show host Keith Weinhold writes for both Forbes and Rich Dad Advisors and delivers a new show every week. Since 2014, there's been millions of listener downloads in 188 world nations. He has A-list show guests include top-selling personal finance author Robert Kiyosaki. Get Rich Education can be heard on every podcast platform, plus it has its own dedicated Apple and Android listener phone apps. Build wealth on the go with the Get Rich Education podcast. Sign up now for the Get Rich Education podcast or visit GetRichEducation.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Sinking Spring, Pennsylvania to Manitou Springs, Colorado, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold, and you are inside episode 530 of the GRE podcast. What's the minimum wage? I don't even know. Around here, we don't talk about how to live below your means, but grow your means, and you're going to learn how to earn maximum wage. Austin, Texas is the fastest growing city in America. I've got some really interesting real estate observations for you since I walked it 2 weeks ago. And while touring the Texas State Capitol building was cool, and then on Austin's 6th Street, I hadn't seen that much beer pong since college. But you know, Rainey Street, R-A-I-N-E-Y, just south of the downtown near the river, that was Austin's interesting real estate street. The fastest growing city in the United States has falling home prices and falling rents. What a paradox that is in the fastest growing city. I mean, how do you balance that weirdness? Yes, the census tells us that Austin is the fastest growing, and even as a gentrified hipster haven with murals on the walls, street corners there, food trucks, coffee shops, you know, the coffee shops that make you feel like you're in an indie film, it doesn't matter. They simply built too much there in Austin. So all of that cannot compete with classic supply versus demand dynamics, old-fashioned Milton Friedman stuff. And really what I saw in both San Antonio and Austin is emblematic of the new apartment supply surge. What's going on Rainey Street? I mean, that's what I call America's apartment oversupply ground zero. Cranes are in the air all over the place. They're building 500-foot apartment towers right across the street from one-story bungalows there on Rainey Street. It's a weird scene. Well, the apartments, they're going to be vacant for a while. And part of the weird scene is that there are outdoor live country music acts on the east side of Rainey Street, and they're playing out of these old one-story bungalows converted to bars. It just feels like they're going to be razed and knocked over any time. And then country music, that's something that you associate with like cows grazing within a mile of you. But that is not going on here. So these huge, new, shiny glass and steel apartment towers are right across the street from it. So it's this weird cultural mix of both country flair and urbanism in Austin. And now there were also some clubs with DJs playing there, something more modern. I mean, like 20-year-old R&B songs that everyone knows the words to by artists like Usher and Akon Remember Akon or Ja Rule? Remember Ja Rule? Maybe they were playing Jay-Z and Ice Cube too. But, maybe Shabuzi would have made more sense on that scene. In any case, it is an unusual scenario there in Austin. So a lively place, a growing place, but apartment buildings got out ahead of the growth. And yes, it all comes back to supply versus demand. Yep, that age-old rivalry between what we've got and what we want. Now, broadly, America has an overall lack of housing supply, and the underbuilding, that is the most prevalent in northern states. And of course, underbuilding, what that does is it increases the number of buyer bids on the few available properties. Well, in turn, that pushes up their home prices faster than the rest of the nation. Now, the states with the most appreciation, they generally have the least new housing inventory being built. And of course, conversely, states with the highest available housing supply have the slowest home price appreciation. Austin is ground zero for that. So with the eclectic rainy street there, it's really representative of how you have some cities that are overbuilt with apartments. You have a lot of apartment completions, but not very many new starts of apartments like I mentioned before. No, in fact, let's zoom out nationally here. Apartment List tells us that apartment rents are really flat. In fact, they're down 0.7% over the past year. Available single-family homes, well, they're in more scarce supply than apartments, and the CoreLogic Single-Family Rent Index tells us that their rents are up 2% annually. All right, something that completely makes sense for a change. The overbuilding of apartments has slowed down their rent growth even more. But here's the thing. The overbuilding of apartments, that's actually slowed down the rent growth in single-family homes somewhat. And you might think that those two things aren't related, apartment rents and single-family rents, but they're a little related. Just say a tenant, they might ideally want a single-family home, but there just aren't many of them out there for rent nationally. So then, if a good new apartment is substantially cheaper, well, some proportion are going to accept an apartment as an alternative, and that's one reason that single-family rent growth is just a modest 2% rather than a more normal 4% or so that you might see as a historic average. But yeah, really the story is all these apartment completions where a lot of them are going to be vacant for a while in some cities. Now, long term, apartments are going to be fine. I'm totally confident of that. The demographic demand for apartments is going to be there because our population is growing and because there aren't many new apartment starts. So really that means over the next couple years, apartment supply versus demand is going to come more back into balance. While we could keep having this ongoing deficiency, though, over for the single-family rental homes, perhaps the best thing that you and I can have happen to increase real estate profitability is to get rents up. So let's take a look at that. Let's look at the prospects for getting rents up in just say the next year or two. And there is a real bright spot here for that. And that is the fact that wages have outpaced inflation every single month for almost 2 years now. Yes, wages and incomes are up. Those higher wages and higher incomes can therefore afford higher rents. And like with a lot of things in economics, it moves slowly and there is a lag effect. And this is, it's really how it usually works when there is a wave of inflation. What happens is first inflation outpaces wage growth. And now that we've come down off the big inflation wave, we're in the era where it has flipped and now wage growth outstrips inflation. Well, the most recent stats, they tell us that America now has 4.6% wage growth and just 2.6% CPI inflation growth. Now, is wage growth higher than the real diminished purchasing power of the dollar, not just the stated CPI inflation? Because you got to remember, CPI is only the level that the government is willing to admit to. But in a sense, who cares? Because look, as a real estate investor, while your principal and interest payment stays fixed every month and inflation can't touch it, we know that wage growth is up 4.6%, and that's the part that really matters. So if that means that you can get a 4.6% rent growth in the near future, after some lag effects settle in, well, that might increase the annual cash flow, the money you feel in your pockets, say 7% or 9% annually. So this wage growth trend, it portends really well for rent growth, ultimately flowing through to your cash flow growth. So we know that home price appreciation is amazing and has been amazing for us investors, leverage and all of that, but there expects to be more upward pressure on rents, and that is led by robust wage growth that is really happening now. And workers are demanding the wage growth to cope with higher consumer prices. Now, when it comes to the prospect of more home price growth, let's listen into Shark Tank shark Barbara Corcoran. She recently talked about what would make home price growth go ballistic, as she puts it. This was her on Fox Business Channel with Neil Cavuto. It's about 3 minutes in length, and then I'll be back to comment.
Barbara Corcoran, now the Corcoran Group founder, Shark Tank aficionado, much more. Brilliant read of real estate, too. Barbara, great to have you.
Thank you.
A lot I'm throwing at you, Barbara, and you always handle it deftly. But first off, on the rate environment right now, between all these headlines and everything, rates have been backing up. And, we just saw a 30-year fixed rate mortgage inch up to 6.84% from 6.78% last week. That was before the market rate run up. So how do you view the environment right now for lending?
Well, I think what we're losing right now, we desperately need is more first-time buyers. Less than 24% of the people buying now are first-time buyers at an all-time low. So rates have been bouncing around a while now, 6 to 7%. So people are confused. They don't have big expectations. They're no longer waiting for a tremendous rate drop. If that happens, God, it would be incredible for the market. But in the last year, in the last month alone, we have sold 3.5% more houses despite what's going on in the interest rates. But the first-time buyers aren't much a piece of that.
I noticed as well, U.S. existing home sales, like you say, up 3.4% October. It's the first year-over-year gain I think we've seen in better part of 3 years. So what was going on there? Because that surprised me.
Well, it doesn't surprise me because there's more houses on the market. So there were 25% more choices for the buyer coming out into the market and looking. And on top of that, the buyers themselves have gotten accustomed to the rates being what they are, and they just got tired of waiting. But I am wondering if we'll ever see a 5% number, because anything with the 5% in front of it is going to make this market go ballistic. But right now, you're already seeing those signs in the last month.
You've reminded me in the past that sometimes it's psychological for a lot of folks, and a lot of them look at that 7% handle on a fixed rate mortgage, get close to or over that. It could tax this recovery or whatever you want to call it. But what do you say?
Oh, if it went higher, of course it would slow down the whole market. It would slow down the whole economy. It would slow down all the support services for the housing market. It would be a terrible thing. But I don't think people are thinking it's going to go much up. If you really listen to the experts, that could happen, but I don't think you're going to see interest rates above 7% again. I'm hoping that it's going to go and hover around 6 or even go lower.
All right. Well, you have a better track record than a lot of those so-called experts. I'm going to go with you, Barbara. But, the one thing that is out there, the worry, is that Donald Trump, say what you will of him, he has aggressive plans to spur the economy. The tariff thing, the talk that, he is going to pour a lot into tax cuts that could juice the economy, so much so that some worry it's going to, get prices going higher. We don't know for how long or how much, but that will be the inevitable consequence of what he's offering. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think inflation is on everybody's mind, and I think it's risky. So I think we're going to find out. I guess it's like a horse race. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, Barbara thinks mortgage rates in the 5s, I guess under 6, then that would make the market go nuts and really push up prices. She reiterated how first-time home buying is at an all-time low. That proportion of the first-time home buyers are down, keeping those people as renters. So we've got the Trump bump and still an inflationary bump behind higher and higher real estate prices going into next year, most likely. But, now you've really got to be selective and filter the kind of information that you listen to and put credence in. We just had a presidential election a month ago, and people love to speculate about the future and what they think, say, tariffs are going to mean for inflation, and then what that's going to do to interest rates. And, all that stuff is just notoriously difficult to predict. It is really tough. I mean, look, I've attended 2 prominent economic and real estate conferences the last few months, and there are some good insights at meetings like that. But here's the thing you've got to keep in mind. Everyone has an opinion, and no one knows the future. George Bernard Shaw's got a great quote. He said, if all the economists were laid end to end, they would never reach a conclusion. So, I mean, we're still going to talk inflation and interest rates here on the show because their effect on your economic life is profound. But guessing about where they're going to go, especially interest rates, that is almost an exercise in futility. There are some things that we know will almost surely affect you. I mean, I'm talking about something like demographics. That is more predictable. Or the benefit of leverage, where if you have too much equity in your properties, you can do something about that right now. And that way, what you do is you actually create your future instead of guessing and speculating about what it might be. Or say, you can create your future. You can learn about a program like, when the Opportunity Zone program came out a while ago, or a new tax incentive program for real estate investors. These are things you can do. You can sink your teeth into them with what you have right now, the resources, the toolkit that you have right now, and actually do something about. And one thing that we do know is that increasingly, millennials cannot afford to buy a house. And it just basically means that their future is poorer. They have to live with other people into their 30s instead of forming a family. They don't have kids. The marriage rate takes a hit. I mean, these numbers have collapsed since the 1980s. The home ownership rate among them has gone from about 50% down to 30%. So millennials and Gen Zers too, they know that their future is really shaky and it's concerning. So you have this same cohort, people in their 30s, doing 2 jobs, taking on 3 jobs, some of them balancing 4 jobs. They don't want to do that. They don't want to work 12-hour days, 6 days a week while they're trying to pay down their college loans. They're doing it because they have to. They can't form a down payment for a home. The average millennial is 36, 37 years old, and their parents and my parents, they're all baby boomers. And, baby boomers were the richest generation that we've ever seen. So what we've got going on here now is the first generation that will not be as rich as their parents. And that's really strange. We're all used to this sort of human progress. I mean, if your parents were middle-class people and you're less well off than them, or your tenant is, well, then what does that mean? Well, it means that you're going to be renting for a while. See, this demographic stuff, this is really happening. There is no speculation here, and that's why I want you to set up your investor life to provide rental property to others. It's a smart place to be positioned. In fact, a lot of media agrees. Yahoo Finance just published an article titled, "Rental Home Investors Are Poised to Benefit." It basically details why rental properties are going to be next year's attractive option for would-be home buyers. This month, analysts at Raymond James and Associates, they say that they see mortgage rates remaining higher for longer given the outcome of the election. Again, no one can really predict mortgage rates. But anyway, they reiterated their outperform ratings. That's the rating that they gave it. Outperform on these 2 companies, American Homes for Rent and Invitation Homes. And they're these institutional home buyers. They do the build-to-rent space. And they noted, Raymond James that is, noted that we are increasingly confident in the longer-term outlook for single-family rental fundamentals and the industry's growth prospects. That's the end of their quote. So that's what the analysts of financial planning firm Raymond James and Associates had to say. And suffice to say, there is a lot of positive momentum for rental property, especially in the single-family space. Coming up next, why we hate Jeff Bezos for his wealth, but love performers like Harry Styles, Rihanna, Taylor Swift, Dua Lipa, and Olivia Rodrigo despite their wealth. Hey, check out all of our real estate investing resources at GetRichEducation.com. It's the home for our podcast, this very show that you're listening to right now. Also, videos, blogs, how to get our newsletter. Be sure you're doing that. Connections with our recommended real estate service providers, a way for you to contact us over there, and also how you can connect with our completely free, yes, truly free real estate investment coaching. All of that and more is at GetRichEducation.com. I'm Keith Weinhold. More next. You're listening to Get Rich Education. Oh, geez. The national average bank account pays less than 1% on your savings, so your bank is getting rich off of you. You've got to earn way more, or else you're losing your hard-earned cash to inflation. Let the liquidity fund help you put your money to work with minimum risk. Your cash generates up to a 10% return and compounds year in and year out instead of earning less than 1% in your bank account. The minimum investment is just $25K. You keep getting paid until you decide you want your money back. Their decade-plus track record proves they've always paid their investors 100% in full and on time. And you know how I know? Because I'm an investor in this myself. Earn 10% like me and GRE listeners are. Text FAMILY to 66866 to learn about Freedom Family Investments Liquidity Fund on your journey to financial freedom through passive income. Text FAMILY to 66866. Hey, you can get your mortgage loans at the same place where I get mine, at Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They've provided our listeners with more loans than any provider in the entire nation because they specialize in income properties. They help you build a long-term plan for growing your real estate empire with leverage. You can start your pre-qualification and chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. Start now while it's on your mind at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is the king of commercial real estate, Dolph DeRoos. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. A Taylor Swift-loving friend recently said the weirdest thing to me: I don't buy from Amazon. I hate Jeff Bezos. He doesn't need any more money. Yeah, that's what they said. That struck me as so odd. Well, Taylor Swift is a billionaire with a B and a net worth of $1.6 billion and going up. And, you know, we're doing this everywhere in society. Why do we vilify wealthy entrepreneurs like Bezos, yet glorify wealthy actors and athletes and singers like Taylor Swift? Let's look into this because I've actually got some answers for why so many people apply this double standard to wealthy celebrities and well-known people. And I know I've mentioned to you before that Taylor Swift and I were actually born in the same hometown of Reading, Pennsylvania, West Reading, actually. Vilifying business people, yet glorifying performers, that seems to transcend, any of these celebrity personality or character flaws. So let's put all that stuff aside. That's distracting, that devolves and gets us off topic. Let's just focus on the wealth part and the resentment of that wealth. Because often it's not that people dislike Bezos for, say, the decline of small retail, though there is that, or any of his personal traits, but specifically they hate his wealth. But by the way, yet they have an Amazon account. Well, as a society, We just love celebrities despite their wealth if they're stage performers like Rihanna, Taylor Swift, Dua Lipa, Olivia Rodrigo, Harry Styles, LeBron James. I mean, we applaud Stephen Curry's three-pointers and Shohei Ohtani's home runs. When Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts got a $255 million contract extension, we loved it. Fans plastered their walls with his poster, but yet at the same time, while people are doing that, society often disparages successful entrepreneurs and business owners for their wealth, like Bezos, or Barbara Corcoran, who we heard from earlier, or Spanx founder Sarah Blakely. So I analyze why society does this. So let's see what we can learn from it. And I should add, of course, that like with most anything, you can find some exceptions out there, some outliers. I mean, Warren Buffett's net worth is over $100 billion, and yet seems like everyone wants to sit around a campfire and listen to his sage investing wisdom. And some athletes are despised for sure. And then there's a guy like Ryan Reynolds who kind of spans both worlds and lives his best life in Hollywood and in business. But really, our emotional divide, it begins with the primordial human senses of jealousy and envy. And there's a cartoon floating around out there, and the cartoon has just two frames. In the first frame, it shows a guy standing in front of the room with a crowd of people that he's speaking to, and he asks, "Who hates the rich?" And everyone in the crowd has their hand up, raised high. Everyone hates the rich. And then the second frame of the cartoon shows the same scene, and the guy in the front of the room is saying, "Now, who wants to be rich?" And yeah, everyone's got their hand raised up again. So let's be realistic. Ask most people that resent the wealthy, all right, what income do you think you need to be considered rich yourself? Maybe they would answer, say, 5 times as much as I'm making now. Oh yeah? Well, I bet if right after that you offered them a 5x pay raise for the same job, they would take it. But yet they resent the wealthy, even though 5x would make them wealthy. Now, there's a component of optics here too. You, with your own eyes, get to see Taylor Swift perform at a concert. Her work is visible. It's satisfying. You might be emotionally moved by that. And from all accounts, Taylor does put in a ton of work to perform that well, sing that well, and put in the physical endurance of these 3+ hour concerts. That really is amazing. I don't denigrate her for owning a Dassault Falcon private jet like she does. I mean, I don't disparage any wealthy person for wealth alone. I think deep down in your heart, it's where a lot of people want to be. Robert Downey Jr., he performs we'll call it his magnum opus on screen as Iron Man, Tony Stark in Marvel movies, and he's been paid up to $600 million for that role across many movies. But yet, we find that satisfying, which is weird. I mean, Taylor Swift, she is herself, but actors like Robert Downey Jr. actually pretend to be someone else. So we praise an actor like Robert Downey Jr., and he's best known for pretending to be someone else, but yet we despise, say, Apple's leader Tim Cook for his wealth. Why in the heck would that be? I mean, how do you justify that? Well, it's because Tim Cook's performances aren't visible. It's optics. You didn't get to see the process of how Bezos revolutionized Amazon's 24-hour delivery to your doorstep, or drone delivery. What Bezos is doing on a computer is not exactly a spectator sport, okay? We don't get to see the work that Apple Steve Jobs did for our iPhone, or what Tim Cook does for our iPhone or iPad or MacBook. So therefore, it's less satisfying because it wasn't visible. And yet, Tim Cook's highest endeavor, it's less glamorous than that of an actor, and yet Tim Cook completely acts like himself, for all ways I can tell, unlike an actor. And Tim Cook, he really shapes the world that you and I live in today. I mean, he has definitely influenced your life more than some fictitious superhero has. There's also an element of imitation here. And this is really important because, look, you and I really, for all intents and purposes, we cannot be like Taylor Swift or LeBron James. But you know what? We can be a little like Jeff Bezos or Tim Cook. At some point in your life, you get real and you tell yourself that you cannot be like LeBron James. You cannot sprout to be 6'9" and be the all-time leader in NBA points scored. You're not going to be like Taylor Swift and have the highest grossing musical tour of all time with more than 7 million tickets sold now. You couldn't sell any tickets to people that would want to see you sing. I sure couldn't. But see, you can be a successful entrepreneur. You just have to do. And when you have to do, and you know you could do those things, see, this means that you and I don't have any cop-out. So sometimes we refute an entrepreneur's success to try to let ourselves off the hook from actually doing. You know, I think it's human nature to sort of protect our ego and tell ourselves, I can't be like them. But that's false, because being wealthy is a choice, something I actually didn't believe when I was younger. If you wanted to, yes, not some other listener, but you could have a successful business and perhaps even parlay your success into being a yacht owner. You could actually be that. Now, yacht owner, that's not some goal of mine, but see, instead of resenting a yacht owner, you can be inspired by that success. You don't have to launch a space company and fly people to Mars. You can do something here on Earth. You can own a successful e-commerce company, or rent out cars to people, or provide what people truly need and righteously serve a lot of people with housing as a real estate investor. You can do all those things, even if it's just 1% of the level that Bezos does with e-commerce, even if it's 1/10 of 1%. See, you can get a piece of that. This is similar to how popular culture denigrates landlords and yet over-sympathizes with tenants. Sometimes the tenant is right, but the landlord is often not some mega corporation. They're usually a mom-and-pop investor that took on risk and took out a mortgage loan to provide property for a complete stranger. Now, let's say that you achieve what we'll call success, quote-unquote success, as a real estate entrepreneur because you just added your 20th rental unit. All right, you had 19. As soon as you go to 20, then is that the right level at which you're supposed to start being denigrated? But up to that point, it was okay? I mean, see, this can sound a little silly. In fact, just last week at the New Orleans Investment Conference, I met a GRE listener and investor, Jenny from Indiana. She actually owns 19 rental units. They're mostly single-family rentals. All right, well, is it okay to own 19, but then she should start being resented once she adds her 20th property and serves that many people? That doesn't make any sense. And neither does resenting Bezos. I mean, he grew up in challenging conditions with a 17-year-old mother and an alcoholic father. Bezos worked, innovated, took risks, raised money. His guiding light at Amazon has been an ethical 3 words: serve the customer. That's a good thing. He came from disadvantaged conditions to serve the customer. And the good news here is that you can do this too. You don't need to have a certain body type or an IQ. Serve the tenant. Serve the market. I mean, I have seen successful entrepreneurs that are overweight, short, old, young, tall, female, male, even dyslexic, and they have all crushed it in business. Among the world's 8 billion people, you yourself see life in a way that no one else sees it. So at some point, You learn that you really can't sing like Taylor Swift, or jump over a car like LeBron, or be as funny as Nate Bargatze. But you can be you, and that's enough. But you have to do, and oh yeah, not give up every time things get tough, but nobody's stopping you. An entrepreneur is a crazy person who risks their own money for freedom rather than exchanging their freedom for money. You took the leap. Critics stand on the sidelines. When they're disparaged only because they're wealthy, it says more about the critic than it says about you, the successful entrepreneur and real estate investor. So instead, you can ask yourself the question, what is stopping me from creating my own version of that success? We misdirect our emotions when we vilify entrepreneurs and glorify stage performers merely based on what's more visible, more emotional, and more imitative, rather than the creator of the products and services that put real value in your life. So don't be ashamed of applying yourself and using your ingenuity and your strategy and your careful risk-taking for earning more income for yourself. We shouldn't disparage Bezos, LeBron, Taylor Swift, or Dua Lipa for their wealth, because it is the same kind of success that we all wish that we could have. Coming up in future weeks on the show here, we're getting closer to the end of the year where I will reveal Get Rich Education's home price appreciation forecast for next year right here on the show. And I'm going to give you an exact percentage national home price appreciation number. You're going to know what to expect. I've done that for you for a few years here now. I think this is going to be the 4th year in a row where I'm doing it. It's sort of becoming a tradition. But coming up before that here on the show, I've shared with you how, it's usually going to take you 5 years or more to go from your day job to financial freedom through real estate investing. But we've had some nice appreciation the last few years, and some GRE listeners are doing it faster than 5 years. Pretty soon here, I'm going to have a conversation with a GRE listener that applied principles that he heard here on the show, and he quit his job for real estate in just 3 years. He's going to be here with me and tell you how he did it. Thanks for listening. Hey, go ahead and tell a friend about the show here. Take a screenshot and post it on your social media. I really appreciate you sharing the GRE podcast with your friends and others. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.